Do you need some help getting ready for the FTCE School Psychologist PK-12 test? That's exam code 036. My name is Elizabeth. I'm a college professor and test prep expert for Study.com. In this video, we will walk through 4 practice questions covering the subtopic knowledge of statistics, research methods, and program evaluation. That way you're confident on test day. Are you ready? Let's dive in. When conducting a program evaluation of a new reading intervention, a school psychologist decides to use a mixed methods approach. What is the primary advantage of this research design? Take a moment to read the options below. Before we decide on which option is the best answer, let's pay attention to what the question is asking. We are looking for the primary advantage of a mixed methods approach. Mixed methods research design combines both quantitative and qualitative data. That means we're looking for numbers and narratives together. So with that in mind, let's examine each option carefully. We can eliminate this option since this choice allows for the statistical analysis of reading scores before and after the intervention only. That does sound appealing. We do want to measure reading scores since that is what is important here, but notice the word only. Mixed methods is not limited to just numerical changes, but it should also be capturing participant experiences, observations, or perspectives. So this would not be our best answer. This option claims that mixed methods eliminates the need for a control group. This is a common misconception. Whether or not a study uses a control group depends on the overall research design, whether it's experimental or quasi-experimental, not whether it uses mixed methods. Mixed methods simply describes how we collect and integrate different types of data, not how the study is structured, so this would not be the correct option. We can eliminate this choice since it says it focuses solely on the narrative descriptions of the program's effectiveness without considering numerical data. Here again, we notice the word solely. If a study only focused on narratives, it would be a purely qualitative study, not a mixed methods approach. Mixed methods must include both words and numbers, so this would not be our best option. That brings us to the best answer. It provides a comprehensive understanding by combining numerical data with detailed participant experiences. A mixed methods approach integrates both quantitative numerical data and qualitative participant experience data, offering a more complete picture of the intervention's effectiveness by capturing the complexity of human behavior in various contexts. This would be the best option. Which of the following best explains how the patient's impressions can be an inaccurate measurement of psychological treatment? Would it be the placebo effect, controlled research studies, treatment studies, or comparative studies? The focus here is on inaccurate impressions, not objective measurement, so we need to look for an explanation tied to subjective perception. With that in mind, let's go ahead and eliminate the incorrect options first. We can begin by eliminating controlled research studies. These studies are designed to reduce bias and measure outcomes accurately through standardized procedures. They address the problem of inaccurate impressions, they don't cause it. So this choice would be off track. Next, we can eliminate treatment studies. While treatment studies assess the effectiveness of interventions, they don't specifically explain why a patient's subjective impressions could be misleading, so this would not be our best option. We can also eliminate comparative studies. Comparative studies evaluate 2 or more treatments against each other. Again, this can be helpful for judging effectiveness, but they are about comparing methods, not about patient bias or distorted perceptions, so it would not be the best answer. That means the most accurate explanation here is the placebo effect. The placebo effect happens when patients report feeling better simply because they expect the treatment to work, even if the treatment itself has no active therapeutic component. This psychological phenomenon demonstrates exactly how impressions can mislead both patients and researchers if not properly accounted for. What does a p-value of less than 0.05 typically indicate in a statistical test? Is it that the null hypothesis cannot be rejected? the test is invalid, the results are not statistically significant, or the results are statistically significant. Let's start by remembering that the p-value measures the probability that the results observed were due to random chance. Let's begin by eliminating the incorrect options first. This first option states that a p-value less than 0.05 means the null hypothesis cannot be rejected. But that's the opposite of what a small p-value indicates. A low p-value suggests that the results are unlikely under the null hypothesis, meaning the null hypothesis should be rejected. So this would not be the best answer. Next, we can eliminate the option that the test is invalid. The validity of a test is based on how well it measures what it claims to measure, not on the p-value itself. A p-value does not determine whether or not a test is valid. We can also eliminate the option that says the results are not statistically significant. This again contradicts what a p-value less than 0.05 means. A p-value smaller than 0.05 is the conventional benchmark for saying results are statistically significant. That means the correct understanding is that a p-value of less than 0.05 means the results are, in fact, statistically significant. This means that the probability of the observed data given the null hypothesis is less than 5%, leading to the rejection of the null hypothesis. In other words, the low probability suggests that the observed data likely did not occur by chance. So this would be the correct option. A researcher wants to study the relationship between the classroom environment and the level of participation of a student in classroom activities. Which of the following types of non-experimental research design would the researcher most likely use? Would it be longitudinal research design, intuitive research design, cross-sectional research design, or correlational research design? The key phrases here are relationship and non-experimental, meaning the researcher is observing natural relationships without manipulating variables. Let's keep that in mind as we eliminate the incorrect options first. We can begin by eliminating longitudinal research design. Longitudinal studies follow participants over long periods of time, focusing mainly on changes over time. While they can uncover relationships, this is not the primary design described here. Next, we can definitely cross off intuitive research design. This is actually a distractor. There is no formal research design called intuitive research in scientific methodology. We can also eliminate the option of cross-sectional research design. Cross-sectional studies examine data at a single point in time, often comparing different groups. These are useful for snapshots, but they are not primarily designed to study the relationships between two variables within the same group, so it would not be the best option. That leaves us with the correct choice. The most appropriate method in this scenario would be a correlational research design. Correlational research design is a type of non-experimental research design that measures the relationship between random variables, such as the classroom environment and the participation level of students. The direction of the correlation between the variables in this type of research design can be positive, negative, or zero. This would be a perfect fit for this scenario. I hope this video was helpful and you're feeling a little more comfortable with how to approach the test. For additional help on the FTCE School Psychologist PK-12 test, check out our other videos in this channel. Please like and subscribe so you don't miss any of our new videos. You can also get a lot of help preparing for this and many other exams on the study.com website. As a member, you can access short, targeted video lessons, extra study materials, personalized study plans, and hundreds of practice questions like the ones we just went over. We'd love to hear about your experience, and if there are any other tests or topics you'd like us to cover, please let us know in the comments. Be sure to come back and share your success once you've passed your test. Good luck and happy studying!